get going. So what's the CDP? When the CDP started, just so you know, there was an American guy called, there is an American guy, sorry, called David Rabb. He is the one-man analyst. He lives in Pennsylvania, very close to Philadelphia. And he coined this phrase, right? He started coining this phrase back in 2013. And he met me in 2013 and he was like writing in his blog, you know, yesterday I met another CDP from Tel Aviv, Israel, and then he kind of like talks about our solution and things like that. But for 3-4 years, nobody paid attention, right? So at some point, I think I met him at this trade show, and I was like, David, what about CDP? Like, does it hold water? Like, do people now use it? Like, do people like it? It's like, no, I'm probably going to abandon it. And probably 6 months later, the entire planet was talking about CDPs. So that's funny. But he was the guy that actually coined it, and I was actually there. I was one of the, you know, OGs of CDP without knowing I'm a CDP, right? So nobody called it like that. So what's a CDP? So first of all, it's about having a single customer view, right? So you want to have all of your customer data in one place. Originally, it's kind of like marketing owned. It's a system that's owned by marketing. You want to have the ability to activate the data. And what does activated data mean? You know, some people just pushing the data out to different systems that could be activating the data, or actually, you know, managing campaigns and controlling campaigns that could also be like a more mature way of activating the data. And the idea is that the data is kind of like available to other systems. So with a CDP, it's very easy to get the data in from different sources of data. It's very easy to get data out and share it with different systems in your ecosystem. So that's how everything started. Very broad. It doesn't distinguish between B2B businesses versus B2C businesses. What exactly does the single customer view need to include? Is it, you know, you had some ad tech players that call themselves the CDPs, some web personalization companies as a CDP. You got some tag management players that are a CDP. So there's many interpretations to what's a CDP, but I was like, those are kind of like the main 4 pillars of what is a CDP. And let's talk about the evolution. So how did we get here to something called the CDP, where before that, we had something called the data warehouse, right? And we still have something, you know, called the data warehouse. And both of them were aiming for this idea of single source of truth, right? So since people started using BI systems, the main problem was that you had one guy from the manufacturing coming in and saying, we had a great month. We just kind of like, you know, sold a lot of units. And the guy from sales, like, what do you mean? We didn't sell a lot of units. We had a shitty month. And another guy from finance were like, no, what do you guys mean? It's the average month. It's just like every other month. So you had many different silos of data, and every person was, sometimes the data could even be the same, but the definitions are different and the metrics are different. So people are looking at reality differently. And that has always been the promise of kind of like, you know, BI in general, right? Business intelligence is about kind of like having one single organizational truth. Everybody speaks the same language. And then there's many ways to get there, but both the data warehouse and the CDP in many ways are also playing that game, right? You're trying to reach that single source of truth. That's always correct. But let's talk about the differences between the two. Obviously, data warehouses probably came 20 or 30 years before CDPs. So a lot has changed, but data warehouse was primarily focused on financial data, right? It started as mostly about financial data because companies at the time didn't have customer data to the same degree. If you think about it, even people that were more kind of like consumer facing and they had stores, a lot of them had no loyalty program. So most of the revenue is actually not identified. You don't know who's making the purchase, right? Because there's no loyalty program or something like that. When we started to go online, every person, regardless of a loyalty program that exists or doesn't exist, every person is now a known customer, right? Because when you check out, you give us your email address. Next time you use the same email address. I know you, right? Or automatically I'm going to create some kind of an ID because we're now shopping online. So we got more customer data. So a CDP is focused on customer data, right? So the new, the customer obsessed planet that we live in, all of the brands, the revolution in the world where relationships matter. And in the past, kind of like it was all about your products, but now products have been commoditized, right? You can get the same product across many, many different brands. So it's about the data of the customer, the relationship with the customer, knowing the customer, treating the customer in a personalized fashion, making the customer feel like they're relevant, and we get them and we understand them and we know them and we can connect with them on an emotional level. That's, the revolution that we're living in. So CDPs are at the center of that. So the customer data is now more important and it's richer. So CDPs focus on customer data, right? I'm not saying that data warehouses didn't have customer data, right? But the main entity that the CDP is built around is the customer ID, right? And the main entity that the data warehouse was built around was not necessarily the customer ID. So data warehouse, it was mostly syncing data from internal legacy systems, right? So you had a bunch of servers within your business, nothing in the cloud, right? So and you're kind of like getting data from different legacy systems and you're getting it in, and you do like a year project or a 2-year project where you interview a ton of departments and asking them, how do you calculate this? How do you calculate that? And then you try to create some kind of a standard. And CDPs are syncing data from third-party systems, right? All of a sudden, we got a lot of, we got cloud computing, we got a lot of vendors, we're using a ton of services. Those services have APIs, and we can sync this data automatically for multiple services very easily, which didn't exist in the past. So building on that point, if you think about data warehouse, it was very hard to create new data in the data warehouse, extract data outside of the data warehouse. I remember once I met like this airline company, and I was telling them the type of data that I need to set up Optimove to build kind of like the CDP. And they're like, no, but we'll never get the data out of the data warehouse. And one guy said, I was able to get data from the data warehouse 18 months ago. It was like a war story that he was really proud of. So like, what? I mean, are you kidding me? Why do we have the data warehouse if nobody can get the data? So it's systems that are more antiquated. They got a lot of processes, a lot of legacy processes. Just like any older system, it gets to be very dangerous to touch it, right? You're afraid of what's going to happen. And with CDPs, API economy, cloud computing, very easy to get data in and out, right? So that's kind of like another thing. And the users of the data warehouse has to be a very technical user, right? You got to know SQL very well. You got to know ETL processes, data piping, all of that. You got to know it very well. And with CDPs, just like with democratizing everything, you got to be tech literate. Again, there's different types of users to CDPs, and there's different types of CDPs, but the level of expertise is constantly going down, right? So it's let's call it tech literate, right? You got to understand tech, but you don't necessarily have to write code. So that's how we got here, right?